end zone. It's Robinson for the touchdown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to a special episode. Although it is Tuesday, this is not Turtles Take. We're switching it up a little bit and coming back with our Bears pregame show out of Hi-Bearnation to talk all things Chicago Bears and what transpired today with Roquan Smith and the organization, as well as what we're looking forward to seeing here in the Week 1 preseason matchup. So, as always, I am Tarbill. I got my guy Ace with me on this side. One of these days I will get that right when I point.
Yeah. Sometimes I screw it up still.
What's up, Ace? How we doing tonight?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing well, man. It's been a busy media day for sure for the Bears. A lot's transpired over the last 10, 12 hours now. And I've been listening to it all day on the Chicago radio and watching the pressers and seeing this situation kind of evolve with Roquan Smith. And if you don't mind, I'd like to get right into that. So for those that missed it, and I'm sure not many did, as it was all over Twitter, all over radio, and other forms of social media, Roquan Smith wrote a very lengthy letter to the fans of Chicago, was how he addressed it, and basically came out and said, contract negotiations aren't fair for me. I don't feel that it's right for me to take the deal that's being offered to me, as it would set a precedent for others in the linebacker position, and I don't see us coming to terms on a deal at this point in time. He said basically the only way that he sees the situation being reconciled is if the McCaskies speak to him directly and speak about the direction that they want this deal to go. At this point, I don't think that that's a realistic ask. I don't think you're in a position, although you are one of the star players, we'll say, on this team, I don't know that you're in a position to demand a conversation with George McCaskey or anyone from the McCaskey family for that matter. I think that realistically, he wants $22 million is what I'm hearing. That's a big no.
Yeah, no way.
Roquan Smith is worth $15 to $18 million a year on a good day.
I heard that they offered him like 17 a year for 5 years, which I think is fair.
I totally think
if you look at
fair.
Like, he's not an edge rush guy, so he doesn't
rush the passer.
Right. And that's that, and the quarterback position and offensive line, that's where you put your money. Everybody knows that, right?
Agreed.
And he wants to get paid like, a top guy. He's never made a Pro Bowl. Maybe that's not his fault, albeit, but I do think that this idea that the Bears are like slighting him because they don't want to pay him to be the highest paid guy, and then you want to go run to the owners, like, come on, man, that's childish.
It's ridiculous. And I'll just say this. Guys who typically are their own agents are guys that are on league minimum or veteran minimum deals, not guys that have made millions of dollars throughout their career already with an organization. So to me, it's mind-boggling that Roquan Smith is his own agent in that aspect, but it's also the agent's the mediator, right? The agent is the person that kind of sugarcoats what the organization says and brings it back to you. Well, if you don't have an agent and you're that guy, you're not getting shit sugarcoated. They are blatantly coming to you and saying, this is what we think you're worth. This is what we want to pay you. and this is our offer. And obviously the organization and Roquan are further apart than they thought they were. To elaborate that a little bit, during the presser today with Ryan Poles, in my opinion, he kind of shot himself in the foot. Yeah. I don't know if you had a chance to watch this.
I heard part of it. I didn't watch it, but I heard part of it. I was driving.
Overall, the ending was solid for me. I mean, I think before Poles went off stage, he did say that our goal is to ultimately re-sign Roquan and keep him as a Chicago Bear. That was good to hear.
Right.
But he shot himself in the foot very early on in that presser by saying we thought we offered him a very respectable deal. We didn't realize that we didn't realize that we were as far apart as we are, essentially. And for you as the GM, in my opinion, that's not necessarily a good look. You should know where you're at in negotiations with one of your star players, and you should ultimately know how far away you guys are when it comes to the bottom line.
Yep. I think Poles has really started off his tenure as the Bears GM not going really well. He got rid of a lot of key guys on defense. Yeah, he picked up draft picks. The draft was decent. Obviously, hindsight, we won't know for a few years down the road. I do think that some of the misses that he's had, the handling of this, it's just for a first-time GM, he's had a lot of misses. Not a lot of positive things have happened, really.
And not to interrupt you there, but just to elaborate a little bit, that is a key point that he's a first-time GM, right?
Right.
He's going to make mistakes, and I expect him to not be perfect in everything he does. I have realistic expectations for this team, although you guys called me crazy saying they're going to win 10 games, but that's conversation for a little later in the show. We can talk about how crazy I am and how much Kool-Aid I'm drinking, but realistically, I think that the handling was poor by Ryan Poles and the organization. I also think it was out of character and kind of poorly placed by Roquan Smith to go to Twitter immediately and say, this is where we're at, and kind of try to force the Bears' hand. In my opinion, that's not a very professional move to make.
No.
I feel like those meetings could have been had behind closed doors. And, at the very least, he could have talked with Coach Flus. He could have talked with Ryan Poles and said, hey, look, this is where we're at. I'm not happy with this. What do we need to do to improve the number? And I'm not by any means saying the Bears should go out and give him $22 million a year.
Right.
He's not. Roquan Smith is a very good linebacker. He's not top 3 at the position.
No. Well, he wants to get paid like Shaq Leonard, right? Formerly Darius. I'm gonna just run down his numbers, right? So he in his career, which is the same length from 18 to 21 right now as Roquan Smith. 15 sacks, 11 interceptions. Just those two stats alone, right? Roquan has 14 sacks and 5 interceptions. Roquan, to me, the reason I think we as Bears fans like him so much is because he's a hustle guy, right? Like you always see him around the play. He's great at getting the tackle. But still, like you can't pay top dollar for a guy that just doesn't get to the quarterback as much as you need him to.
I'm going to say this simply. I think, as one would argue, that running backs in the league are, I don't want to say a dime a dozen, but relatively interchangeable.
Right.
I would argue that even a guy like Roquan Smith, there's another linebacker out there that's interchangeable. You may not get the same production out of him, but I feel like you can fill the gaps, and you could definitely get a good, solid second-round pick out of Roquan Smith right now, possibly a first round for a team that's really desperate for a good linebacker. And I don't know, if the Bears could go out and get a top-tier receiver by trading Roquan Smith, I'd be okay with that.
Well, right. Okay, so let me ask you this. Are the Bears ready to win a Super Bowl this year? No.
No.
Right? No. So
it pains me to say it, but no.
So spending that money on Roquan Smith would be a stupid investment if you ask me. that money you can spend, like you said, wide receivers. That the wide receivers right now, especially, are just decimated with injuries. Offensive line help, right? Edge rush help. There's so much more you can spend that money on than paying Roquan Smith $20 million a year. I don't think it's a smart investment personally.
No, and I think as Bears fans, we all recognize that, yes, Roquan Smith's a good player, but we always want to compare him to Lance Briggs or Brian Urlacher.
Right.
We almost get that nostalgic feeling tied into our feelings towards him because he's a linebacker and the Bears have always had top tier quality linebackers. But the reality of the situation is there's so much more you could do with that money. Like you said, it's just, it's frustrating. It's hard. I love Roquan. I love the energy that he brings to this organization. And I think he is definitely a guy that you look for as being a leader of the defense as of now. But again, I just don't know if it makes sense. And what's the number, right? If it's 18 million a year, I can live with it. If it's 22 million a year, I really can't. And that's only a difference of $4 million per year. But over the length of the contract, that adds up, of course, 5-year deal. And it's money that may be invested elsewhere. This is a young team. The secondary's solidified as one of the best potential secondaries in football right now with the way Brisker has performed throughout camp, as well as Gordon. You've got Eddie Jackson, the other younger guy that's out there, Vildor.
Vildor. I was Jalen Johnson, I was going to say.
Jalen Johnson as well. So you've definitely got some pieces in the defensive secondary. I think the important thing for this organization and this team is that overall, as you said, we're not going to be Super Bowl contenders this year.
Nope.
But we have a young secondary, and I believe the offense will keep the defense off the field much more than they have in years past, to where we don't necessarily have to be that giant presence on defense. We lost a lot of names on defense, but if the offense can be productive and stay on the field and limit the amount of time that the defense is out there, I think this team's going to win a lot of games, in my opinion, more games than people think they are.
You know what that sounded like to me? The same old song and dance, right? Chicago Bears football. What are we always looking for? A defense to hold it up for the offense, right? I think
the other way around is what
I think saying. Like we all already assumed that this defense was going to take a step back this year, right? And now that you're losing, key guys like Roquan Smith, I don't think they're going to get rid of him. I think they'll end up coming to a deal. But the defense itself, it's really young, which is good. But they don't have any, at least not yet, of those like big splash playmaker guys, right? And those are the guys you want, like an Eddie Jackson.
Well,
if he can come back, if he can come back to form of like 18, 19 Eddie Jackson, then I think, you have some possibility there. The offense,
I think he will, but
I know we want them to hold the ball a little bit and let the defense rest. But like, if we're being honest, man, the offensive line, rickety, right? Justin Fields has no wide receivers.
I'm going to stop you right there. When you say this offensive line is rickety, I understand where you're coming from, but it's also much improved from a year ago.
True.
So you've got a couple veteran presence guys on the line now. Who knows what's happening with Tevin Jenkins? That's the big question mark, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe here's a hot, wild take. Maybe you package Roquan Smith and Tevin Jenkins in a trade, and you go out and get a true number one wide receiver for the two of them.
I mean, I dig it. Tevin Jenkins, he's probably not going to be on the team to start. If you can package both of them, why not?
It seems like Tevin Jenkins has some maturity issues that he needs to get over quickly.
Well, but also Roquan has not been the most reliable guy either at times. There was a couple, not last year, but the year before, where he just went like MIA on the team. He held out as a rookie. Remember, he didn't jump in right away.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's a history with him also. And
Right.
That's another reason why to not pay a guy like that. You know what I mean? If he's going to throw a hissy fit and not want to play, so you're going to pay this guy all this money to just sit on the sideline because he doesn't feel appreciated. I don't like it.
Yeah, and again, it's not me dogging Roquan Smith at all. I think he's a good player. I just don't think that $22 million makes sense for this organization.
Right.
With that being said, kind of to return to your point of the defense keeping the offense off the field, we have to break that mentality if we ever want to see this Chicago Bears organization win a Super Bowl in the future.
And I know you're right.
Defenses don't win championships.
No.
This is not 1985. And for those of you that are still stuck reminiscing on the 1985 Bears, I'm sorry, but it's time to move on. As great as the
team
was,
been time to move on.
Exactly. Like, my greatest memory as a Bears fan is watching Devin Hester return the opening kickoff in a Super Bowl loss.
Right.
There's something wrong
100%.
with that.
Yep.
I've told you many times I was at the Double Doink game.
Yep.
Saw it live in person, and
brutal.
Up until that last drive by Philadelphia, that was going to turn into my greatest Bears fan moment. And then obviously,
you know what's bogus about that Double Doink? I was watching that game with a couple buddies, right? And I turned to them at halftime and I was like, this game is going to come down to Cody Parkey having to make a field goal and he'll miss. And sure enough, I should have bet that he would fucking miss that. I wonder what it would have been in Vegas, but that would have been like the only bet I've won.
Okay, we got a comment here in the chat from Jacob Peterson. Who is the number one wide receiver available, though, that's in the Bears' reach?
I mean, that's a great question. First off, you'd have to look for teams that would need offensive line help and could use a linebacker, right? If you want to package Roquan and Tevin Jenkins.
Dallas
is some place that obviously they appreciate a good offensive line. Seattle, they're not bad.
Who's Dallas's number one wide receiver though?
What the hell's his name? CeeDee Lamb? Is
CeeDee
he their number one?
Yeah, I probably.
Maybe.
I don't think you could get him, but
no.
I don't know. Again, Jacob, great question. I think that realistically, it's going to come down to what teams want a linebacker and also need that line help, as Ace alluded to. I don't know who that is off the top of my head. I'd like to say it's a team like Seattle and we could go get DK Metcalf, but come on.
Yeah, I don't think so. He just signed that deal, right?
What?
He just signed a new deal with them for a couple years, right? So
he did. It was unfortunate news. It broke my heart. But
I would have loved to have seen him.
I don't know. Maybe a team like Denver, they've got some weapons out there. They're deep at the wide receiver position, although their receivers are always hurt, it seems like.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what about Atlanta? Who are Atlanta's wide receivers? Because every ex-Chicago Bear, coaches, front office people, players, they're already there.
Shit,
so
their number one is I was going to make a joke and I'm missing his name, Cordero Patterson.
I mean, shit. He was one of the best weapons the Bears had the year that he was over here, the couple of years he was here.
Yeah. No, realistically, I don't know who it would be, but there's somebody out there. And I don't know, but there's still some wide receiver free agents that haven't been signed that are potential upgrades to what the Bears have right now. And that's no disrespect to anyone on the team. I just think that this team is young. The depth isn't really there. And a lot of guys are hurt.
Right.
Like, an alarming number of guys are hurt at the wide receiver position.
Yeah. Somebody just got hurt today at Family Fest.
N'Keal Harry's hurt. It wasn't him.
Bowman, I think. Hold on. I think it was I'll check real quick.
Like, this tells you that the Bears don't have depth when they're talking about Aquanemius St. Brown. I probably just butchered his first name.
I think you did pretty good on that.
They're talking about him and how he's excelled at training camp. And I watched that guy in Green Bay. I know he drops the freaking ball every single time in a clutch moment. So
David Moore was the guy who got hurt today at practice. He had to be carted off the field. Byron Pringle isn't practicing. Velus Jones isn't practicing. Oh man, there really isn't. We're going to rely on a guy, Chris Finke. That's his name. Like, I don't think that's a good name for somebody. I've never even heard of the guy.
So
the only guy that's still healthy, knock on wood, is Darnell Mooney and St. Brown.
So yeah, you've got Darnell Mooney's an excellent receiver, but I've said it time in and time out, and I will die on this hill. Darnell Mooney is not a number one receiver.
Not yet.
He's not going to. He doesn't have the body structure to be a 50-50 ball number one wide receiver.
I mean, I get the 50-50 ball, but
he's what?
Well, like I said,
he's
so
195 pounds soaking wet. Like, he's a small guy.
I don't remember if it was on Turtles Take that I talked with you guys about this, but I would rather have 3 or 4 good wide receivers than one great wide receiver, because I feel like it would be easier for the quarterback to spread the ball instead of always looking for the one guy, right? But even the guys the Bears have, they're not even average, most of them.
No, that's the problem. And even if N'Keal Harry turns around and somehow becomes a great wide receiver, which I don't believe is going to happen, but even if it were to happen somehow and he's your number one, you've got Mooney and Brown behind him, and then you've got a bunch of gadget, you've got Velus Jones now. We're forgetting and discrediting him. And I apologize for that because he has had a really good camp.
That's what I hear.
So you've got Velus Jones in that mix, obviously, but there's not one big name and you know who's catching 50-50 balls with accuracy out in Los Angeles right now? Allen Robinson.
Yeah, but he couldn't do it here.
Who has had a phenomenal camp. He gave up on the organization.
Yeah, I agree.
And they gave up on him. And that's fine. Sometimes it's time for a change of scenery and for a guy to just part ways and move on.
Right.
Get with a different organization. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think it's clear that it was time for Allen Robinson and the Bears to move away from each other.
Right.
But it just sucks to see kind of the position we're in right now with the wide receiver, because here we have this weapon at quarterback in Justin Fields, who's in college. Yes, obviously the NFL is a tougher game than college, but at Ohio State, in a very pro-like system,
right,
Justin Fields had success when he had good pieces around him. And realistically, your number 1 and 2 targets right now are Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney. Cole Kmet's going to be more of a hybrid leaning towards wide receiver. He can block really well, but I think he's going to be the check down the safety valve for Justin Fields, because we don't have that big-bodied number 1 wide receiver. He's going to be the guy that gets those 50-50 targets a lot.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I do see our guest has joined us in the green room, so let's go ahead and take this opportunity to bring in our guy, friend of the show, Lester Wiltfong Jr., joining us right now. How are you doing tonight, man?
Doing good, guys. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Doing well. Appreciate you joining us.
Of course.
Big Bears news today, obviously.
We've been arguing over how much money Roquan Smith's worth for the last 30 minutes. So
Lester, I got one question for you. So me and Tarbill were talking a little bit earlier in the show about Ryan Poles, and I think personally he has had himself a less than stellar offseason so far. What are your thoughts on the job that he's doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely fair. There's been some good, some bad. A little bit more bad than you would like to see, but, this first-year GM, and, the proof will be in the product on the field. I mean, if these moves he made, if they pan out, if this receiver room comes together, if the offensive line actually becomes a cohesive unit, then he'll be proven right. But right now on paper, I'm with you. It's been not the best offseason for Ryan Poles.
My grandfather used to say, if wishes were fishes, the world would be an ocean.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe I'm just jaded by the Bears the last few seasons, but it's hard for me to see any of these guys in the wide receiver room that are still healthy really being able to take that next step and become a number 1 guy. Do you think Mooney has the ability with the chemistry between him and Fields to take that step into the number one spot?
Yeah, I think Mooney's probably the guy that the Bears believe is a true number one. I think Mooney believes he's a true number one. Justin Fields, that's his guy. So, it's all depends on your definition of a number one. Is your number one a guy like who's 6'4", 220 that can go make, all the catches? Or is he a guy like Mooney who is a precise route runner, has great speed and has good hands? I mean, it all depends on your definition of a number one. I mean, in KC, it could be argued that Tyreek Hill was their number one. He's a smaller receiver. A lot of it depends on what's around him. And I think if the receiving core is solid around Mooney, and when I say receiving core, I'm talking about the tight ends, the running backs, the whole total package, I think he can be a number one for you.
Interesting. And before you jumped on, I kind of alluded to the classical 6'4", 225-pound guy being your number one.
I heard you.
It's for me, that's what I've always seen as a number one, but it doesn't mean that a guy like Mooney can't work. It's just untraditional to me. So, and I'm a creature of habit. I'm hesitant for change. So as I would love to see Darnell Mooney go out and have a 1,500-yard season and define himself as a number one. It'd be great for the organization. But what do you think of some of these other guys like Aquanemius St. Brown and N'Keal Harry? I mean, do you think the Bears might have a diamond in the rough in Harry? It's too early to tell, or he's just another guy?
I think at this point he's just another guy. I think he's in the mix as an X. I think Aquanemius St. Brown is probably a starting X. I think he was going to be the starting X once they signed him, just because of his familiarity with the offense. We're talking about a guy that has some skills. He's 6'4". He's a 4.4 speed guy. He knows the offense. He's a pretty good run blocker. And as that X receiver for the Bears, he's not going to be getting a huge volume of targets. So if he can stretch the field, make some plays for you, they scheme him open a few times, I think that's all you want. But as far as a diamond in the rough, so much unproven. I mean, Simba Webster, Isaiah Coulter, Daz Newsome, a lot of guys that are unproven on the NFL level. Byron Pringle, he has some skin in the game as far as what he's done in KC, but they're asking him to take on a different role in Chicago. I think he'll be fine, but he only got a one-year deal. So how fine do the Bears expect him to be? I think he's a guy that's going to be a placeholder. Harry's a placeholder. St. Brown's on a one-year deal. He's a placeholder. If any of these one-year deal guys prove worthy of a second contract, I think the Bears will give it to him. But at this point, it's really hard to say, which one of those guys will actually step up.
Simba Webster, that's a guy that I'm ashamed to admit that I forgot the Bears even signed.
I was at camp over the weekend, a couple weeks, I think the end of July, and he made a few plays. It was surprising because I forgot, he was even a guy that was in the mix. But, he's a veteran. He may be your sixth receiver because he has that special teams experience. Who knows? Like I said, at this point, a lot of question marks. Chris Finke is on the roster. There's a lot of guys that you're just hoping one of them will step up. And, at this point, besides the rookie, Velus Jones, I think he's definitely a lock. But even him, is he going to be a guy that's a legit playmaker at this level? Time will tell.
So we have a comment in the chat that Kmet will lead the Bears in all receiving categories. He hasn't proven that yet, right? I mean, do you see that leap forward for him? I know that we've all kind of been waiting, but I feel like if he can't do it this year, then there's probably nothing past what we've already seen.
As far as all receiving categories, the only way that happens is if Mooney's hurt. I think Mooney's going to be the top targeted guy. He'll get the bulk of the targets. I do think Kmet's going to take a leap. I mean, look, I'm higher on Kmet than most. He's coming off of a 60-catch, 600-yard season. No touchdowns, obviously, but that's going to change. I mean, he'll be schemed open in the red zone with this regime. I think Kmet. I see a lot of fans saying that at the best they want him to be a Kyle Rudolph type, and I'm fine with that. Kyle Rudolph's a good 10-year pro. Kyle Rudolph didn't get those kind of numbers that Kmet had until he was like 27 years old. Cole Kmet, I think, is 23. Right. He's a younger player. There is upside still there with him. it's not the upside a lot of fans want because he was a second-round pick, and a lot of fans expected him to be, a lot of fans were still pissed because the Bears passed on Antoine Winfield or some of these other receivers or tight ends in the draft. Claypool's doing really good in Pittsburgh. Fans are pissed because, he's not the guy. So, get over the draft status thing. It's over. He's a Bear. Can he be a productive starting a wide tight end for this team? Yes, he can.
Yeah, and I think he proved when he was at Notre Dame that he's capable of being diverse. He can catch balls. He can block very well. And even his blocking was very good last year for the Bears as well. I mean, he's, like you said, he wasn't a guy that got a lot of red zone targets. That's undoubtedly going to change because you don't have guys like Jimmy Graham to target in the red zone this year. So I do agree that he will have a better season this year than last. I don't know that he's ever going to be an elite tight end, but if he's good enough to get the job done blocking and he can get some red zone targets for us, I'm content with that. And be a check down for Justin Fields when he needs that go-to option besides Mooney. If Mooney's out of the play, he's probably going to commit based on the chemistry that they've developed already together.
Now,
go ahead.
So I was going to ask about Justin Fields. Obviously, last season he did not look the greatest at times. Some flashes. This year, new front office, new head coach, new offense, new offensive coordinator, not a lot of weapons. Is it fair to look at him during this season and make a final judgment on if he's going to be that guy?
I think the Bears would like to. I think they would like to have their answer, this season. But he's a second-year quarterback. I mean, sometimes it takes these guys more than a year or two to really to show what they've got. Plus, he's going, like I said, he's going into a brand new system. So I think I'm confident he'll show enough to where the franchise will say, yeah, I think this is going to be our guy long term. He's got to do it on the field. I think he's a great fit for the offense. I think he has a good coaching staff in place that they'll utilize what he does best. They'll let him run on occasion. The bootlegs, the system is really designed for a guy like Justin Fields. It comes down to the playmaker. Does he have enough guys on the field to make plays for him? Like you said, he trusts Mooney. He probably trusts Kmet. Is he going to build that rapport with Pringle, with Jones, with St. Brown? We saw a little bit of it in camp with St. Brown, so maybe that'll be one of his guys. So, again, time will tell, but the upside's there for sure, in my opinion, with Justin Fields.
Do you think he'll be able to handle playing in this city? I know that there was, what was it, last week, the comments about like, you guys aren't here, or you people don't know about like what we're trying to do in practice. The last couple off seasons, he's had these comments that kind of put his foot in his mouth. Do you think even if he does, show some signs that he'll be able to keep it together mentally?
I mean, I think that's just how fans and media are. I mean, there's so much more of it.
Right.
With social media is just so prevalent these days. I think you have to have thick skin as a pro athlete, way more so than, 10, 15 years ago. It's more out there. I mean, everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a thought. Everyone has a take. And, all it takes is for the right meme to be created, and then it's viral. So I think Justin Fields, he's kind of shown that he has that, what the F mentality a lot. Some of the stuff, like even the comments that you talked about, he came across to me. Yeah, it was probably something he probably shouldn't have said, but it was also in the same vein, like, who cares what you guys have to say? We're doing our thing, and that's kind of what we're going to do. So, it's a little different than, like I said, things are twisted. Like the comment with Mitch Trubisky last year or a year before, where he was turning off the TVs, everyone knew what he kind of meant by that, but it got twisted and taken out of context. And the next thing you know, he's this soft, mentally weak guy that needs the TVs turned off. That's not how it was meant, but that's how it was perceived. So, and again, the same with Mitch. I mean, Mitch has bounced back. He's now starting for the Steelers for now. We'll see what happens there, but you have to be mentally tough to play that spot. He has been having a rough camp for sure.
But that's not to say he won't turn it around. I mean, he might be in a Mike Glennon situation like we had here when he came out. I mean, he might be in game 4 and he throws a pick and people are screaming for the rookie. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
I will say this though: he has a stable coaching staff around him. Mike Tomlin's one of the best head coaches in the game, so if he does pull the trigger, it's going to be warranted at that time.
Right, I agree 100%.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Mike Tomlin, as you said, being the great coach that he is, will ultimately be conservative and won't listen to the outside noise, and he'll pull the trigger when it's right for him.
Yeah. Right, he's not going to let the season drown with Mitch Trubisky if he can help it. So,
but with that being said, we got to switch over to the defensive side.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
We got to get Lester's opinion on what transpired today. So, Lester, as you know, Twitter abruptly went crazy this morning when Roquan Smith put out the letter, I would say, to Bears fans, and basically said that he doesn't see him in the organization reaching common ground at this point on his contract. The only way that he sees it being reconcilable is if the McCaskies personally come talk to him. And I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but it was to that extent. What do you think of this whole situation? Firstly, it was reported that he wants $20 to $22 million a year. Is Roquan Smith worth $20+ million a year in your opinion?
I mean, I think the average from Leonard and from Warner, two players he's comped to, is just a touch under 20. So, I mean, such is life in the NFL. If a guy gets paid 1 year, the next guy that comes down the pipe, he usually gets more. That's just how it is. So I think if you're the Bears, if you value him as a key cog of this defense, I think you do got to give him a little bit more on the average, just because that's how things usually happen in the NFL. I mean, is he worth it? I mean, that's a relative term. I think what he'll bring to the Bears, I think it would be worth to pay him that kind of money, especially the situation the Bears are now as far as their contract status with the other guys in the defense. Justin Fields still on the rookie deal, so you have some extra money to play with. $100 million in cap space next offseason. It's just how you're going to structure that deal. And then of course it's where the guarantees are. I know that the Bears could be trying to play a game where they're giving them a bigger average but less guarantees. So at the end of the day, it's how do the Bears value him? I think Ryan Poles values him. He's talked about him all offseason. The coaches talked about him all offseason. I think they value him. They know how important the will linebacker is to this defense. So I can't see him leaving, but I also didn't see this getting public this quick. So
do you think that the fact that he doesn't have an agent is playing a bigger role in this?
I mean, he's getting advice from somewhere, obviously, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's friends, whether it's family. He's getting advice somewhere. I mean, I would assume at his point in his career, he's got to be. So I mean, it's bad advice to go public like this. There's
especially
no
the way
you're trying to force the hand of the organization essentially by saying we can't come to a deal, and then
what are they supposed to do? Fold at this point? No, because then you're going to set a bad precedent for the rest of these guys on the team. So now you kind of have to butt back against him, and I don't want to say prove a point with him, but make a stand somehow so that the rest of these guys don't feel like they can do it also.
Well, and I think that's the thing is, sorry, go ahead, Lester.
No, I mean, he has no leverage in the situation.
Right.
He has the 5th-year option this year, which is a little under $10 million. And then the Bears have 2 years to franchise him in theory. So in theory, the next 3 years, he's locked up in Chicago if that's what the Bears want to do. So there really is no leverage in his part. I think it was a poor PR move on his part to come out like this. I know at first when it happened, most fans right away are like, oh my God, you got to pay Roquan. I was the same way. You got to pay Roquan, but it depends on the money. If he's looking to be, if he's looking to be one of the top highest paid defensive players in the entire game, you don't pay an off-ball linebacker that much. He doesn't impact the game the way an Aaron Donald does. So you can't pay him like Aaron Donald. He's an off-ball linebacker. So you look at his comps, you give him something fair, which Ryan Poles had a presser today. He said he thought he had something on the table, some record-setting numbers on the table. So that tells you there was something there. So I was surprised Ryan Poles came back with a presser of his own. That's something we haven't really seen much in Chicago the last few years. So the fact that he did that, I think kind of swayed public opinion maybe a little bit towards him. it's in the media now, so that's what kind of sucks because now they're going to negotiate out in the open.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's the unfortunate thing. But as I noted with Ace before you jumped on with us, Lester, how does a guy that's making $10 million plus a year not have an agent? So most typically you see guys without agents being either they have some sort of law school background or study, or they're guys that are on a veteran minimum deal, league minimum, and can't really, I don't want to say can't afford to pay an agent, but would rather keep that percentage of their money. It's odd to me that Roquan doesn't have an agent. And, you know, the agent's the mediator, right? They sugarcoat everything before they take it back to the player. So him not having an agent, they're sitting down and saying, this is what we think you're worth. This is what we want to pay you. If you like it, sign here. And clearly he doesn't like it up to this point. So I think the reports were that they're offering him around $17 million a year was the initial contract offer. And they're not that far apart. If he thinks he's worth 20 to 22 million, make it work somehow. Yeah. But I think both sides have to give a little and make it make sense, both for Roquan and the organization.
I think what a lot of it was, especially if you listen to like, you know, all the Chicago radio today, was that de-escalation clause. And now I'm not a contract guy, so I'm not familiar on exactly what that means. Lester, I don't know if you are familiar with what it means. From what I gathered, it's kind of like if he misses time, he doesn't get paid. Like, so let's say he plays 12 games but misses 4 because he doesn't want to play or something, he won't get the guaranteed money. That's at least how I kind of figured it when they were talking about it. He's the only linebacker that's had that in his contract. Maybe that's kind of a slight that he's not really happy about. I'm not sure exactly what else he wants, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few weird things in his career. I mean, he held out for that different clause to be put in his rookie deal. You know, there was an incident a couple years back. So I mean, there's been enough things where the Bears want to make sure they're protected on their side. You know, but ultimately, it's you have to look at the player. It comes down to what he does between the lines. And I mean, if you truly think as a franchise you're, you know, 3, 4, 5 years away from contending, then don't pay him. You know, ship him out. But if you think that you're having a nice soft reset this year, and then if things fall into place that you'll at least be competing for a playoff spot next season, if you really think that's your window to start becoming a decent team, why would you not pay a 23-year-old guy that is a 2-time second team All-Pro?
Right. Even if it takes 2 years, he'll still have 3 years left on a deal to really help make an impact and lead the defense.
And he'll be what, 25, 26 years old, still in his
He's
prime.
Still very young,
you know? But with the player side of things, it's all about the guarantee. You know, are you going to give him enough guarantee? Because, you know, an injury can happen anytime, you know, so you want to make sure you get those guarantees. And I think that's going to be the sticking point. You know, will those guarantees, you know, match or exceed what Leonard and Warner got? And I think if the Bears come to the table with that, if the average per year is very comparable to those two guys, but the guarantees are up a little higher, I think that could sweeten the pot.
What do you think ends up happening at the end of this?
I think he comes back. I really do. I thought it all along. There's certain guys' positions are devalued. Running back, off-ball linebacker, you know, but just because of where the Bears are as a franchise, they're in this reset mode. You know, I can see trading Mack. I could see trading Quinn if that happens. You know, I could see trading some of these older guys. But if you're not going to pay your guys that you think are core members of your team, that sends a message to the locker room. And it's like, you know, I just don't understand that from that perspective. You know, there's, you know, at the end of the day, the dollars and cents have to make sense, so to speak. And in this situation, it just makes sense. You pay Roquan. He's young. You know, his prime is right now. He'll be a part of this roster when you're competing. It's a no-brainer, but again, is he looking for record-setting defensive money? If that's the case, I'm not sure the Bears will go there.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thought as well. I mean, obviously, I love what he brings to the table, the energy that he brings to this Bears organization. But if it's going to hinder our ability to go out and get future players because of the money that's tied up with him. At some point, it's got to make the most sense for the organization as well as him. And I think, as you alluded to, they will come to some sort of agreement. But, man, that's a bold statement to come out and say publicly that I don't see us coming to terms. And then I want to speak to the McCaskies directly. Personally, what do you want to talk to George for? George isn't a football guy.
Right. He's not a football evaluator. We've all heard it.
Exactly.
I think Poles needs a win. So I think it's important for confidence in him going forward, players and fans alike, for him to at least have this go right. You've seen like the issues with Tevin Jenkins and, you know, a couple of the missed signings, a lot of injuries, some guys getting arrested. To me, this Roquan Smith thing could really be the top thing he needs to focus on for his first season, is getting him locked in and making sure that you have this anchor on your defense going forward.
I mean, it's a very expensive PR move, but honestly, it's a hit. It's an optical hit the Bears could do right now. I mean, it's like I said, I don't see many negatives in getting him locked up. If the money's not ridiculous, it's a no-brainer.
What have you I know we were on the defensive side of the ball, and I only got a few more questions. What are your thoughts on the whole Tevin Jenkins thing? You know, there was a lot of reports that, you know, first he was maybe injured, then he was maybe disgruntled, then the coaching staff didn't like him. Now there's nothing wrong, then he's going to be traded. Like, what have you heard about this whole situation?
I mean, just probably the same as you. I mean, it's there's so many things out there. The Bears are sticking to their guns. You know, it was he woke up with something. They talked about it being injury related. You know, that's what they said every time they met the media about it. You know, then Luke Getsy says, you know, they're excited for him to get back when he's going to get back, and then the next day he's back. So, you know, it's maybe it was an injury. You know, maybe it was something where it was a disagreement with the coaching staff. You know, but whatever it is, they're working through it. He is currently in his ramp-up stage to get himself ready to play. You know, he did get some work with the second team right tackle today. He did get some guard work the other day. So the fact that he's, you know, showing a little bit of value to the team, I think it's good for him, because I just can't see him not being one of their best five. If he's right mentally and physically, if he's right, he fits their scheme. He's a mauler. He's got that attitude. I think he's a good fit for this team moving forward. So I don't know why you would want to just, close the book on that, unless there is something really, going on there behind the scenes. But I think his best thing for him is just put his head down and go to work. And that seems what he's doing these last couple of days.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that realistically, if it's a maturity thing, if he's not acting as mature as the team would like him to, or, he's having disagreements with the coaching staff, like you said, kind of put up or shut up, right? Put your head down, go to work, and prove that you deserve a spot on the starting five. And I would say if healthy and performing well, he could definitely be a starter, right? He's a guy that a lot of people were surprised fell out of the first round of the draft. So he's obviously very green, yet still largely unproven due to the back injury last year. But to say that the organization is going to walk away from him, I think it's too soon. However, I did give Angelo this question earlier in the show before you joined us. What if they package Roquan Smith and Tevin Jenkins together to go trade for a big name receiver? Are you okay with that? Can you sleep at night?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if it's to the point where the Bears know that, Jenkins is so disgruntled, it is not going to work. If they know that Roquan wants ridiculous money, it's not going to work. So if they could, make that deal happen and trade those guys in a package somewhere and, get a guy they feel is a legit, top receiver to help Fields, I think that's a move you have to make.
Do you think that this is more of a case of the new regime coming in and players just kind of being on edge, not sure of what's going on? Or do you think this is a bigger thing with the coaching staff and the front office? They just, they're pushing out the old guys that were from the last regime and they just want to get their guys in.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, this roster's been, 50 some odd new players from a season ago. They let all the free agents leave. They only brought back, I think, Patrick Scales and DeAndre Houston Carson, and then a couple UFA or a couple of exclusive rights guys. So, they want to make this roster theirs. I mean, can you blame them? The Bears were bad last year. The Bears have been bad for the last few years. They got lucky in 2018. Obviously, that's what it looks like now in hindsight. They had a great defense, and it just kind of everything worked perfect that year. It was just a great year, But time has showed us that was not the true Matt Nagy, because what we saw the last few years was that guy. So, I just think you got to move on. You got to get your guys in, and Tevin Jenkins, who was a second-round draft pick, but he wasn't a polls pick. So if he doesn't fit, whether from the coaching staff perspective or from the his attitude with the team, if you move on from him, I think it's a sunk cost at this point.
Yeah, hopefully he turns it around. I mean, it's a tough situation when you look at a guy like that, and you do see some negatives, and obviously the injury proneness and everything like that plays into it, but only time will tell. I do have to ask you this, Lester, before you leave, and I think I asked you the last time we all got together, but I want to know if your opinion's changed. How many games do the Chicago Bears win this year?
I'm not sure what I said last time, but I'm thinking 6, maybe 7. I mean, if everything goes perfect, if Justin Fields takes that step and he's like playing at a high level, the O-line comes together, the receivers come together, I would not be surprised if they're flirting with 500, 8-9 wins. I would not be surprised. But realistically, I'm thinking something around 6. But I see this team having a future. I see this team struggling early, starting to show some promise late. And as Bears fans, I think we can get behind that. If we see this team is going in the right direction, if Justin Fields is pointing in the right direction, I think as fans we'll be cool with that.
Yeah, and I think you said something similar the last time I asked you, so you've stayed consistent there.
See?
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm saying 10 wins.
There it is. I love it.
We did an on the air analysis, and Angelo came out like 13 wins.
I was just being outrageous. Like, come on.
No.
There ain't no way they're winning 10 games. I'll be surprised if they win 6. I'll call it a good year if they win 6 games.
I'm going to bet the over, and I'm probably going to lose my ass and regret it. But
what is that? I think it's like 6.5 now is the last I saw in Vegas.
Yep.
So
is that all it's at is 6.5?
I think it's 6.5.
I got to place that bet.
You can throw
You're going to go over on that?
I'll throw a couple units on that.
All right.
I've got faith in this team. I think that, as Lester alluded to, Justin Fields is going to be pointing way up by the end of this season. Sure, there might be some struggles early, but I think he's solidified as your guy by the end of this season. He's your franchise quarterback moving forward. And that premise alone is exciting for me as a Bears fan, because who have we had that's been a franchise caliber quarterback? Jay Cutler, and we ran him out of town. I mean, we made the guy hate the game of football because we critiqued him so hard. So at the end of the day, I definitely think Justin Fields has what it takes. He's just got to put it all together on the field. No pun intended.
I like what you did there.
But with that being said, Lester, we do appreciate your expertise as always when it comes to talking Bears. We appreciate you giving us so much time. Before we let you go, do you want to let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on WindyCityGridiron.com. We also have a podcast channel, same name. Our video home is actually called Second City Gridiron. We record all our podcasts on there, and then you can catch me on Twitter at Wiltfong Jr.
All right.
As always, we appreciate the insight that we get from Lester Wiltfong Jr. Make sure you go give him a follow and a listen if you are not following him currently. As always, thanks again, man, and we'll talk soon.
Anytime, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Lester.
Have a good night, Lester. Man, always a good time when we get a chance to talk with our guy, Lester Wiltfong Jr. I mean, such a good football mind, very engaging, and really, he always has
he always
has very realistic opinions.
Yeah, yep, that's what I was gonna say. Like sometimes we
get
a little outrageous
here, but I don't want to say that in a negative way at all. It's just he plays more
devil's
realistic
advocate
than
really
I am.
well.
I drink the Kool-Aid, man. I'm a Bears fan bleed blue and orange, right?
I mean, I am too, but at the end of the day,
so
you can't. Nah,
before we wrap up, a couple points to touch on here. Did you see Barstool Big Cat's interview with Aaron Rodgers?
I did not see it, but I read some of it.
So he essentially told Aaron Rodgers that like his Super Bowl is watching the Packers lose in the playoffs every year. Which I think is hilarious. Like I love it. I love the authenticity of that and like the energy that Big Cat always kills it when he.
I do love Big Cat.
Like that, but
it's fabulous.
Man, it's just.
But I'll
Aaron
say
Rodgers was laughing it off like that's all you guys have to look forward to.
I'll say this: as a guy that lives in Wisconsin, surrounded by Packer fans, most of my friends Packer fans.
That's unfortunate.
I definitely root for them to lose if the Bears are having a terrible season. Like last year, I've rooted against them. Every time they're in the playoffs, I root against them. Why? Because I just don't like them. And I don't like their fans. I like my friends, but sometimes it can be a little over the top with their Green Bay Packer takes.
Their loss last year against the 49ers, right?
Yeah.
Robbie Gold and Jimmy G high-fiving, basically saying "fuck the Packers."
I'm pretty sure that's what
that's exactly
what they said.
Like that, to see Robbie Gold do that and end their season as a guy who wishes the Bears never moved on from Robbie Gold. Robbie Gold is the Bears' leading all-time scorer. Let that sit in for a minute.
Yeah.
Like if you don't actively know that stat, no one has scored more points in Bears history than Robbie Gold.
That's because the offense has just been terrible. All they did was kick
this
field
is
goals.
True. All they did was kick field goals his entire tenure here.
Right. That's it.
But I mean, with that being said, man, it is moments like that are fun, but I don't want to have to resort to those moments.
Me either.
I want to be able to expect high caliber football out of our organization and see them execute. Like Matt Nagy, as much as I rip on the guy, they always said he built a good culture around here. I never saw it. Good cultures win more than 6 fucking football games. Like,
well, yeah, that's all he talked about, right?
At the end of the day, if your culture and your locker room's behind you and we're going to strongly get through this 6-game losing streak, you shouldn't be in a 6-game losing streak.
Right. That's what
you have excellent culture.
Right. Oh, we got great culture, right? But then I'm going to stand up my quarterback during the offseason when he wants to discuss the offense to let me know what to leave in and what to take out. Or
okay, but here's the thing with that too. I was frustrated when I saw that initially, but look at Mitchell Trubisky. Look at how he's performing so far in camp in Pittsburgh. Some of the blame has to go to him. I'm not saying all the blame has to go to him, but that was just 50-50 terrible. Matt Nagy was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and Mitchell Trubisky didn't know if the hole was a circle, square, or a triangle. Like,
I mean, yeah, but still, the idea that you're just going to blow your quarterback off and not at least save face and go be like, oh yeah, okay, Mitch, yeah, that's great, do it or not, but like, don't just leave your team, the leader of your team, hanging. Right? I think.
Do you remember when they went to Nick Foles in, I believe it was the Sunday night game? I don't know who they were playing off the top of my head, but they went to put Foles in, and Nagy was talking to Trubisky on the sideline, and then he was crying, and all of a sudden he was like off, nowhere to be seen for a little while, and then you see Foles running in with the Darth Vader smoked mask.
Yeah. Slinging it around, bringing him back.
It was against Detroit, was it not?
No, I think it was Atlanta.
Atlanta, you're right.
Yeah, yep.
We played Detroit either right before or right after that.
Right after, I'm pretty sure.
But
that was the best moment of the season, right? Because
Right.
It was just downhill from there.
It kills me to see where our organization is at. Like, not that I feel good about this coming season, but the last few seasons have been so hard to stomach. And we've seen the pieces, I would say, with Justin Fields last year. I always allude to that awesome 4th and 5 touchdown that he ran in at Soldier Field while I was there watching him play the Bears-Niners game. And then, you look at the game, like the Pittsburgh Steelers game for me last year was a breakout moment for him. Even though the Bears ended up losing that game, that was not of his fault. Like, he did everything that a quarterback can do to come back and win a game, and then the defense folded. And, that's just as much to blame with Sean Desai, I guess, as it was Chuck Pagano the year before. These guys that say they're putting all the bullets in the gun and then realize that they put paintballs in there.
Yeah,
like,
we're gonna take our shots, blitz one time the whole game. What do you take your shots?
What, you taking shots after the game because you're depressed that you lost? Like, what are we doing here?
It's crazy.
No,
Club dub and all that crap.
The arrow's pointing upward. I don't want to see Club Dub reinstituted until this team wins 5 games in a row.
Like, I liked it in 18, right? Because they were winning. But
it got stagnant real quick when they were doing Club Dub and they'd lost 6 games in a row and then they snapped the losing
then Nagy's just like, they do. You gotta kind of let yourself be loose. Like, nah, you guys have been loose. You lost 6 in a row. Like,
right.
Didn't they lose? Didn't they have a season where they lost like 4 in a row and then won and then lost like 4 more in a row or something like that?
Yeah.
Where like you went from one losing streak to another losing streak.
This is what I want ultimately out of a coach. I want a coach that when the team is playing like crap in the first half of a game, goes in the locker room and basically says, you call that football, that is unacceptable. You're not playing football, do better. Like, that's what I want out of Coach Flus, and I think that's what we'll get, is he will praise the team when they do well, but he will critique the team when they don't. And it came out, the players said that there's not one player on that roster that hasn't been critiqued by Coach Flus on their film, and if they tell you they are, they're lying. Like, he's not afraid to go after anyone, and that's, to me, that's an important quality for a coach to have, because ultimately, if you're everybody's best friend, Matt Nagy, I don't care how good your culture is, you lost 6 games in a row. Do better.
Be you. No, don't be you.
Don't be you.
What I like is, obviously, the coaching staff before this. The coaching staff before this clearly didn't run these guys hard, right? Because all off season, all you've heard about from these players is, this is the toughest practice the hardest I've practiced, the most I've been held accountable. There's an old saying, I don't know,
hard in training camp.
Right. I don't remember how exactly it goes, but something about like great players love to be coached hard, right? Because it helps pull that greatness out of them. If you're just walking around like, oh, great job, awesome,
go take a water break.
Right. Without giving any kind of feedback or constructive criticism, you're going to go nowhere. And hopefully, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'll say this. When it comes to training camp, for instance, as you alluded to, it's been harder on the guys this year. I can say, as someone who was active at training camp last year, there was a lot of standing around, a lot of light jogging, too much taking it easy. And I get it. It's training camp. You're not going to go 100% every play. Mm-hmm. But, like, at what point do you need to show some intensity? And they've been doing a lot more situational drills, put the ball on X yard line and go down and score a touchdown. The red zone packages have been tremendously improved and utilized in training camp to where we're going down and we're going to run 7 sets of end zone plays or whatever it is. They're doing things differently and a little more aggressively. As you alluded to, that leads to guys saying, hey, this is the hardest I've ever practiced. But it also makes you question, as you said, what are you doing previously? What was this last regime doing? Ryan and Matt 2.0, as I like to say, I hope are much improved over the previous versions. Only time will tell.
Right.
But I think as of now, we are in a much better place than we were this time last year. Like, I'm excited to watch preseason football on Saturday. Is it Saturday the Bears play?
Yes. Yep.
Just for the simple fact that I know Justin Fields is going to throw some passes.
Right.
Because
yeah.
Coach Flus already said the whole starting unit's going to play. How many plays? I don't know, but they're going to play. For me, if I'm Coach Eberflus, I've got Justin Fields out there for a minimum of a quarter.
I would say it would depend on how the line is holding up, right? The last thing you want to do is have your your franchise quarterback.
Well, yes. I mean, if he's out there getting beat up, obviously you have to make a team-oriented decision. But if he's out there in the protection solid, leave him out there for at least a quarter and let him sling some footballs around.
My thought about this season, and I know we kind of joke around, Bears always make me mad, but realistically, like, my hope for this season is I don't care really what the record is. What I want to see
Justin Fields improve.
I want to see the whole team improve. I want to see, okay, if they make a mistake and then they go back to it, that they corrected that mistake. Because I feel like the last regime, the last coaching staff, you would just see the same mistakes over and over and over again all season long.
Punching guys in the helmet.
Right. Oh, we're going to work on this. Okay, well, it's week 15 and you're still doing it. I
goes out 2 weeks later and punches another guy in the helmet.
Like, yep. Yeah. Like,
no, I get it. You need that solidarity and consistency. You need to learn from mistakes, right? If you don't learn from mistakes, then there's no value added.
Right. And I'm hoping that that we've heard he's holding these guys accountable. I'm hoping that helps that get better, right? Because then you're held accountable for your mistake, where I feel like with Nagy, it wasn't that way. So I'm hoping to see that this year.
I feel like Coach Flus is the kind of guy that would probably punch a Bears player in the helmet if they punched another player in the helmet.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to, right?
He would go full on, who was the coach in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s? Woody Hayes got fired for ripping a helmet off of one of his players during the game and bashing him in the head with it. Like, I don't expect Matt Eberflus to do that, obviously. He's a professional, but I feel like he's the type of coach that's not afraid to get in a guy's grill and tell him, you fucked up when you mess up.
Right, and I think that's what these guys need. They need to be pushed. They need to be harder. I feel like the team was very soft the last couple of years. They would just get pushed around. And I'm cool with, like, obviously don't be outrageous and get yourself penalties. But you still have to show some kind of heart and some kind of anger and just balls really on the field to hit back when you're getting punched in the mouth,
Exactly. I agree 100%. Not that it really matters, but do the Bears win their preseason game on Saturday?
I mean, bet the under. Whatever the under is.
This guy, no faith. Zero faith. So let me ask you this. What if the Bears offense comes out? Let's say Justin Fields gets 3 drives.
Yep.
You think that's fair?
I do think that's a good amount.
Okay. So they give him 3 drives. He comes out and punches the ball in on 3 consecutive drives. Are Bears fans itching?
Yes. Are Bears fans itching? Come on.
They're itching now.
Now. Right. We're itching right now. We're looking for some sign of some sort of greatness, right?
And that's what I'm most excited to see is just his mechanics have improved tremendously from what we hear about training camp.
You hear about his release and everything, his footwork.
I want to see it in live reps because if our starting offense is out there, at least for a series, the starting defense is going to be out there.
Right.
So if he can go out and execute against a starting defense of the Kansas City Chiefs, who are very good, that's who the Bears open up against, right? Kansas City.
I hope so.
I believe it is, or I just made myself sound like an idiot.
I'll look at it right now.
I believe it's Saturday at 1 p.m. against the Chiefs, but I might be crazy.
I'm looking right now.
Get my Jeopardy music.
It is against the Chiefs. Yo, Matt Nagy coming home. Yeah. I hope somebody throws a football at his head.
So what if the Chiefs come out and Patrick Mahomes starts the series? They run some dumb Matt Nagy play and he throws a pick. Soldier Field would. Are they playing in Chicago?
I hope they just chant. I think it is in Chicago. It is. I hope that if I was there, I would start a Fire Nagy chant just because, for old time's sake. You know what I don't want to happen?
I loved it. I'm heartless. I loved it when they were chanting "Fire Nagy" at his son's football game. I thought that was hilarious.
I'll tell you what, if that was my son out there, I'd have been a little salty, but
no, I'd have left. I wouldn't have showed up to the game. I would have gone home and watched on the couch. Like, you're an NFL coach. You can't tell me that you can't have access to the high school fucking football team's local programming for $6 a month.
You know what I don't want to see? I don't want to see them come out and go 3-and-out 3 drives in a row.
If we see that, that's going to be concerning.
Without a doubt. They're going to get ripped apart if that's how it happens.
I don't think it's going to happen, though. Luke Getsy and this offense, I believe, is much more tailored to Justin Fields. But we'll see. We'll get a taste of it on Saturday, right? And then we'll be chomping at the bit for 4 weeks until the home opener on September 11th.
Right. I had John Zagul on with me last week, and we talked a little bit about that. And I don't want this to be a complete and utter shit show season. I don't think we're going to fall into that. Like, I'm really hoping I talked with him about, like, you bring a guy like Luke Getsy, you brought a couple guys from Green Bay. Those guys are part of a winning culture. Maybe not in the playoffs, but regular season winning culture. They've seen what it takes to be a great team, what it takes to get to that next level. I'm hoping that, with him there, a couple of these other guys, they'll be able to raise this offense to a level that's at least able to compete.
And that's, at the end of the day, that's all it's about, right?
Right.
Is being able to compete. If the Bears are truly competitive and they're losing games by 3 points to really good teams, that's progress. Sure, I don't want to see this team lose any games, but realistically, if the needle is pointing upward, so to speak, at the end of the season, and we know that Justin Fields, JF1, is our franchise quarterback for the next 8 to 10 years, that's a big W in my book, because when have the Bears been able to say we have our quarterback of the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult this year to decide if I think we'll see more positives this year than negatives. I just don't know, with the lack of weapons, if it's going to be as flashy and next steppy as we want to see. I don't think next steppy is a word, but
it's not.
I kind of like it, so I'm going to use it.
So you're telling me you don't have as much faith as I do, and that's okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
I don't have as much faith simply because they've shown that when you put faith into them, they'll kick you in the nuts.
You get disappointed.
Right. So I'd rather just go into it disappointed. That way, if they do really well, then I'm like, oh, shit, all right.
I'm happy.
Right, 100%.
I don't have time for that. I need to see Justin Fields perform in the preseason because I'm going week 1, baby.
Oh, you are?
I'm gonna be there for the season opener.
Oh, you told me
Chicago.
that. Yeah, we're gonna do a show, and you're gonna go live, all drunk on the air.
I am not going to be all drunk on the air, but yes, I will go live outside the stadium at some capacity at some point. We'll see.
Talk to some people, see what their thoughts are live. That'd be cool.
So, and again, it's Justin Fields versus Trey Lance.
Yeah.
This is.
I think the Bears are going to win that game.
I do too. I think the Bears are going to win that game by like 17 points.
The offense isn't good, San Francisco. They didn't really play the greatest against Green Bay. They didn't play the greatest.
So before we wrap up here, I do want to ask you this one last question.
Shoot.
Since we're on the topic of San Francisco and Jimmy G's an Eastern Illinois guy, where does the man end up? And is he a starting quarterback in this league?
I mean, I think he's a starting quarterback. I just think it has to be for a different team in San Francisco because they made it clear, hey, we're drafting this guy. You don't take a guy that high and not play him.
I mean, I'd take him over Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, but is he starting anywhere? No.
He is.
Is he?
Marcus Mariota is in Atlanta now.
Oh, Jesus.
Matt Ryan's a Colt.
I heard, did Jameis Winston get hurt? I heard something about he might have got hurt.
I don't know.
I think him in New Orleans or Seattle or
So is New Orleans going with Taysom Hill? Is he the guy?
I thought it was. I
Is
don't.
it Jameis?
I don't know. I think it's
Jameis
Jameis.
still there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't really been keeping up on too many other teams, especially when it comes.
I think it's going to depend on health-wise where he goes. I don't think he's going to be traded by week 1, unless this Deshaun Watson stuff comes down. Then I could see them trading him to Cleveland. But didn't Cleveland just give up like everything they had to get Watson?
The
and
entire
money?
farm, yes.
Right. So what would they have to even trade?
Yeah. Hey, they can lose 6 games and go undefeated the rest of the season. Just saying. Yeah. I don't want to say regardless of the allegations that are against him, but if you take that out of the equation, Deshaun Watson is an excellent quarterback.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's the only reason he's still playing.
Right.
If he was an average quarterback with 26 sexual assault allegations, you think he'd be playing right now? No.
I do not.
No way. Without a doubt.
It's a little hypocritical that Robert Kraft spoke out against him, but
yeah,
that's a topic for another day.
My thought on the whole thing is maybe 1 or 2 might not be telling the truth, but if there's 26 of them, odds are there's at least 1 or 2 that are not lying. So
I don't think you're wrong in saying that. I think that it's an evolving situation. We'll see what the NFL decides to do.
Well, ultimately. I think Roger Goodell just came out and said that with all the evidence that they have, he would be for that. He sees the evidence amounted for enough for a full season suspension at least. So, really? But he's not making that decision. He's got an independent person making that decision. But I agree. Like, you're going to set a horrible precedent if you let this dude miss 6 games and then get to play and lead a team to wherever. Because Cleveland right now is a team that realistically has some good
a Super Bowl contender with Deshaun Watson.
Defense that they have, the running game, Deshaun Watson, their wide receivers. Like, it's not a joke, but I don't think he deserves to play at all this year. That's just me.
Yep, I would agree with you. With that being said, this is out of Hi-Bearnation, and we started talking about lots of other teams. So our Bears, we love them. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to join us. If you are not following us, please go like, subscribe, and follow on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You can find us all over the place. Facebook, we are there. You can follow my personal Facebook. You can follow Angelo's Facebook as well as the USN group on Facebook. Look for us. We're always posting lots of content on Twitter, and all of our shows are uploaded to YouTube. So
tell me that my take is really bad. I post a lot of bad takes on our Facebook page, so come and assault my takes.
Hey, you said it. Your words, brother, not mine. No. But with that being said, guys, we appreciate you joining us. Have a good night, and we will see you again soon.